Welcome back to another episode of No Shame with Shane. I'm your host, Shane Fordham, with all the shameless sports takes. It's been a very, very busy offseason so far with free agency, trades. But I mean, even just looking at the Eagles specifically, I mean, we know it's been crazy league wide. My phone has been going off nonstop league wide, but even with the Eagles specifically, it's been a really busy offseason. A little bit of a controversial one as well with some of the moves that have been made so far. Kind of just starting at the beginning, right? Josh Sweat, Milton Williams, they recently signed to new teams. Being after testing free agency this year, Josh Sweat signing with the Cardinals, Milton Williams signing with the Patriots. I was a little upset at first. I thought that. I mean, obviously, Josh Sweat and Milton Williams were huge, were pretty huge pieces to the D line this past year for the Eagles. I mean, Josh Sweat, 3.5 sacks in the Super Bowl this year. Milton Williams having the year that he did, being that supplemental piece behind Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis at the D tackle spot. It was disappointing to see them go. I thought that the only way we would see them depart Philly for good would be if the Eagles brought in Myles Garrett. Like, as opposed to using that extra money on those two guys, using that extra money to help facilitate the Myles Garrett trade a little better, making that a bit of an easier transition, being able to take on the rest of his contract. I thought that would have been the only acceptable way where it would excuse or make okay not bringing Josh Sweat and Milton Williams back to Philly. Now, with that being said, looking at it now, I'm not as upset as I was before. Just because, we just didn't have the money to pay both of them, right? Which I understand. And also what makes me a little less upset about that is the fact that Myles Garrett is staying where he is at. Like, Myles Garrett staying where he is at in Cleveland makes me feel a whole lot better, because before I was sure that if we didn't get him, that meant the Commanders were going to get him. And as an Eagles fan, y'all know that just about scared the bejesus out of me. Having to face the Commanders defense that they had last year, in addition to Myles Garrett, along with the other moves that they have made this year, bringing in Javon Kinlaw, guys like that. Like, I mean, that would have been a problem for me. But the fact that he's staying where he's at makes me feel a whole lot better about this situation, because honestly, if you look at it, our pass rush is not in jeopardy. Honestly, I think our pass rush is still in a good position, still in good shape to succeed, even without Josh Sweat and Milton Williams, but for less money. Like, we have, like, not paying Josh Sweat and Milton Williams allows us to save money for us to make other moves, which did allow us to make other moves so far this offseason that I'll touch on later this episode. But I'm not upset at it. And the main reason why I'm not totally upset with that loss is because of the fact that we still have Nolan Smith and Jalen Hunt. Like, mind you, we're going to have to pay Jalen Carter next year, who will probably be the highest paid defensive player in the league after next year. That Jalen Carter, his ceiling, it's hard to even see what his ceiling is at this point. The things that he's been doing on the field, like, not even stuff on the stat sheet, but even just the factor plays that he makes on the field, like the way he has been able to collapse the pocket and make quarterbacks panic back there, kind of flushing them out to where Josh Sweat can scoop up a sack, Nolan Smith can scoop up a sack, like, basically just forcing the quarterback to be so uncomfortable. It makes the other guys on that front four, it makes their jobs easier. So, Jalen Carter already looks like an elite defensive tackle. He's already gotten He's already gotten that praise and that sort of official recognition from one of the greatest defensive players to ever do it in Aaron Donald. Especially arguably the greatest defensive tackle to ever play the game. So he's clearly one of them ones cut from that cloth. So he's definitely going to be a guy that we're going to have to pay after next season. Money that we wouldn't necessarily have if we ended up spending it on Milton Williams and Josh Sweat, guys who are definitely more replaceable than the elite talent of a Jalen Carter. But one reason that, especially why I'm good with that is because we still have Nolan Smith and Jalen Hunt. I mean, Nolan Smith and Jalen Hunt. Well, let's talk about Nolan Smith first. I mean, Nolan Smith, a key starter throughout this year, of course, leading up to the Super Bowl. But these are two guys, especially Nolan Smith, who really only got better as the season progressed. Nolan Smith, I mean, just the way he's built, like all the intangibles that he has, being able to beat tackles off the line with speed, being able to beat them with power, with being able to create that separation with his long arms, the violent hands that he has. Like, Nolan Smith is one of them ones too that could very well be an elite talent in the NFL. All-star at the very least. Like, Nolan Smith, I mean, this year he had 6.5 sacks total. Four of those sacks came in the playoffs. So he not only progressed, developmental wise through the season, but you could see the clear improvement as the season progressed in his effect on the opposing offenses. 4 sacks in the playoffs. That's more than half of his sacks throughout the whole year. That is a guy who, if you have a guy that young who is showing signs of taking a step forward every year, taking a significant step forward each season he's been in the league so far, which is 2, took a pretty significant step forward his first year. Didn't really get a lot of playing time his first year, but when he was on the field, you could see flashes of what type of player he could be, what type of force and what type of impact he could make on the game for this Eagles defense. And then this year, going from being a guy that shows promise to being a playmaker, a bona fide playmaker in the postseason when the Eagles really needed it most, in those moments where the Eagles leaned on their defense more than their offense. That is a guy who you also have to be prepared to pay and sort of structure and key out a significant role for him for the future. Like, that's a guy who you are imagining is going to play a big part in this on this team years down the line. So, Nolan Smith is definitely going to be a guy that I feel like can step up in the absence of Josh Sweat and be one of them ones that offensive lines kind of have to take a second look at as well. And then you got Jalen Hunt, who in his rookie year also only got better as the season progressed, especially in the playoffs. 1.5. All of his sacks came in the playoffs. His best plays came during the most important moments of the season. Had 2 forced fumbles throughout the regular season, but when it was time, when everything was on the line, he was one of those guys that really showed up. And that's another guy who, has the body to just be one of them ones, has the body of an elite edge rusher. He has some of the intangibles already. Just looking at the way he uses his hands coming off the line, his violent hands, his quick burst off the line. He can move, he's fast, he can cover ground, he can tackle. We're looking at 2 edge rushers who, honestly, if you ask me, I feel like the ceiling is high for this edge rush duo alone. I mean, this D-line, I feel like, is already in good shape, obviously, because of Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. But when you have two edge rushers like this who have shown the promise that these guys have just in the short amount of time that they both have been in the NFL, that who have both been really made some key plays in the most important parts of the season for this Eagles team. I mean, I don't think that's – I mean, there are definitely worse situations. Like, I don't think that is a terrible situation to fall back on at all. I mean, looking at Nolan Smith and Jalen Hunt, like, it honestly, just watching their tape back, it makes me feel a lot better about not just not paying Josh Sweat and Milton Williams, but also not acquiring Myles Garrett, not paying that extra money for Myles Garrett in a trade when we have two homegrown guys who could really grow into, I mean, it's hard to predict like a player growing into that of a guy like Myles Garrett, but I mean, two guys who can at least get close. I mean, two guys who can at least be tier 3 to tier 2 got tier 3 to tier 2 defensive players in the NFL. And honestly, when I look at Nolan Smith and Jalen Hunt, I wouldn't be surprised if they become if they're the second best edge rushing duo in the NFL by next year, behind Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel in Minnesota. Just with a more of an upside because they're of course younger than those guys. You know, they're not as seasoned as those guys. So that means they got a little more, they got a little more, they have a little more career, they have a bit more of a career span than those guys. The fact that they're showing that type of promise at this young age, we're talking about 23 to 22-year-olds as compared to Grenard and Van Ginkel, who are 29 and 27. Like, I mean, I feel like this could very easily be the second best edge rushing duo in the NFL. And then when you compare that to what is already an elite talent on the interior of the D-line in Jalen Carter, just as an overall tackle, and then Jordan Davis, who has an elite capability to stop and stuff the run. I mean, the D-line I'm not really concerned about. I feel like this D-line is still a unit that can wreak havoc on opposing offensive lines, just with the pattern of progression that we have seen thus far. So I definitely think Nolan Smith and Jalen Hunt are going to become very key pieces in this defense moving forward, into, within the next 2 seasons. I think it's going to be, it makes me feel a lot. I mean, Nolan Smith, honestly, I don't think it'll be hard for Nolan Smith to be better than Josh Sweat, honestly. I mean, we saw one season where Josh Sweat had 16 sacks. 2 years ago, our last Super Bowl appearance, and I mean, we're not exactly talking about elite talent here when talking about Josh Sweat and Milton Williams. Now, I don't want to downplay what they meant to this Eagles team because they were key pieces. I mean, we don't dominate the Chiefs the way we did without the performance we get from Josh Sweat. We're not as successful. The defenses that we had this year in 2022 aren't as dominant without Josh Sweat and what he brought to the table. But at the same time, I think that is the least that we could see from Nolan Smith and really Jalen Hunt too going forward. I think that is the least that we could see. I think that their ceilings are honestly higher. Both Nolan Smith and Jalen Hunt, their ceilings are honestly higher than Josh Sweat because we have already seen them. Obviously not stat-wise, but in terms of just general impact on the field, we have already seen them be playmakers in those crucial moments of the season. So I don't think it's like they have huge shoes to fill in terms of stepping into more of a key role for both of these guys coming off the edge on this D line. It's not like the situation the Browns would have been in had Myles Garrett came to Philly or went to Washington or went to Detroit. It's not like they have huge shoes to fill, So I definitely think that it's definitely going to be a developmental period, having these guys take over, sort of take over those key spots on the D line, and take over more of those minutes. But I definitely think that the future is brighter with Nolan Smith and Jalix Hunt, kind of grooming them to really be more studs in the NFL, already playing with elite talent on the interior line. And, so when you combine that potential, I mean, there's really no telling how good this Eagles defense could be once Nolan Smith, I mean, with a more experienced Nolan Smith, I mean, he's already getting more comfortable, but with a more experienced Nolan Smith, and then with a seasoned Jalix Hunt, getting, a Jalix Hunt who has a full season under his belt as either a starter or a key piece in rotation. But I think it's more likely Jalix Hunt is going to start because, I mean, who's going to start over him? Bryce Huff, So I definitely feel good on that end. Now, what did hurt me a little bit was seeing Darius Slay sign with the Steelers. That was disappointing to me because to me it seems like if you're not paying that money to Josh Sweat and Milton Williams, it seems like the Eagles would have had something to give or to afford Darius Slay with. It just like I feel like that was a move that would have been worth it, especially it being his last year, giving Quinyon Mitchell one more year with another vet like Darius Slay. I think that would have been useful, still having that experience in the secondary, and not, I mean, especially when we could afford it. I mean, it seems like, it doesn't seem like Darius Slay was asking for that much. Like, to me, it seems like the Eagles had enough to bring Slay back at least on a 1 year. So that was disappointing. But at the same time, I don't feel terrible about that either, because I think that this means we'll get to see more of Ringo. I think this means we will get to see more of Ringo, who definitely did have bright spots this past season, kind of being one of those more rotational pieces off the bench, coming in for when Slay was hurt, giving Quinyon or Slay a breather. Isaiah Rodgers was another key rotational piece, that kind of hurt to see him. I kind of, that's another piece that it kind of hurt to see go, but with losing those two guys and both Slay and Isaiah Rodgers, really, I think this means we'll get to see more of Ringo. I mean, this Georgia squad is really going to be up this season for the Eagles. All those Georgia guys are really going to have to step up, Jalen Carter included. He's really becoming more the center of this defense now, along with Zach Bond. It's going to be, this is really going to be the Georgia crew's year this year, as the core of this defense, aside from Quinyon and Coop, of course, but really being the main force on this defense. It's going to be a big year for this Georgia squad, but looking at Ringo specifically, I think that he could be a very integral complement to Quinyon Mitchell on the other side. We saw a lot of good things from him this year, his tackling ability, his ability to cover. I think that is a positive. Losing Slay definitely hurts more to me than losing Josh Sweat and Milton Williams, especially because I think we definitely could have afforded Slay. We couldn't have afforded Sweat and Milton Williams, but we could have afforded Slay. He definitely, obviously, he has more. He's retiring, but he has more in the tank. He wasn't washed. He had some trouble staying healthy this year, but I think that losing Slay hurts, but I am confident that Ringo will be able to step up in his stead, taking over those minutes. Now, what I am absolutely not in favor of, what I absolutely am annoyed with, is the CJ Gardner-Johnson trade. I think that was, I just thought that was so unnecessary, bro. Like, this is one of those rare moments where I think Howie Roseman made the wrong decision. One of the rare moments where I thought Howie Roseman was just flat out wrong. Just made a terrible decision. It's rare when it happens, but I feel like in those rare moments, you have to call it out just because of, I mean, we're talking about CJ Gardner-Johnson. We're talking about CJ Gardner-Johnson, one of the best DBs and most experienced DBs in the NFL. Solidified all-star Pro Bowler in the NFL. Like, this guy led or was tied for most interceptions in the NFL 2 years ago, the last time we went to the Super Bowl. Led the league with six interceptions. Like, I just think when you look at this secondary with and without CJ Gardner-Johnson, you see a big difference. You see a huge difference. With CJ Gardner-Johnson, the Eagles have the best, if not one of the best secondaries in the NFL. Top two, if not two. Like, one of the best secondaries in the NFL. First in the NFL in terms of least amount of passing yards allowed per game. You know, just a blanket coverage of a defense. As opposed to when we don't have CJ Gardner-Johnson, which what we saw in 2023, the secondary leads the NFL in passing yards allowed, in passing touchdowns allowed, being arguably the worst secondary in the NFL, which in turn translated to the overall defense being one of the worst defensive units in the NFL. Like, with CJ Gardner-Johnson, this defense is a Super Bowl caliber defense. We have CJ Gardner-Johnson in 2022. The Eagles are first in least passing yards allowed per game, which definitely made the D-line's job easier, getting to the, having definitely played a factor in that D-line putting up the historic sack totals that they did in 2022. We lose CJ Gardner-Johnson the year after that. We see the decline. This year, we get CJ Gardner-Johnson back in the number 8 in honor of Kobe, best secondary in the NFL. Another vet to kind of mentor Cooper DeJean and Quinion Mitchell. The best secondary for sure in the NFL this year, even better than it was in 2022. Like, there's a clear difference between what this defense looks like with CJ Gardner-Johnson and what it looks like without. There's a clear difference with CJ Gardner-Johnson, without CJ Gardner-Johnson. I thought that was a terrible move. I mean, you get Kenyon Green in exchange from the Texans, a starter, at right guard, which I guess they want to have a plan for whether it's after Mekhi Becton or just so that they can now use Mekhi Becton in an additional trade for another piece. I mean, depending on what, even if that is the plan, depending on what that trade would look like with Mekhi Becton, what we would be getting in exchange for that, I don't see how it is worth trading really a guy who really would have been the leader of that secondary, one of the biggest voices in the locker room for the Eagles, a team that is mostly a young team. I don't see why it's worth trading a sure thing for a supplemental thing. I don't see it. What makes me feel a little better about it is, of course, that, obviously this means Cooper DeJean will play more of a key role in the secondary. Reed Blankenship is going to be back there, of course. So, that makes me feel a little better, but at the same time, why trade a guy who every year we have had him we've had the best defense and have gone to the Super Bowl. I just don't see it. I mean, and it can't be because of the off the field antics, in my opinion, because I mean, it's not like this guy was in trouble. Like, I mean, he wasn't racking up criminal charges like other players have in the NFL this year. I mean, he wasn't one of those distractions, to the team. Clearly wasn't a distraction because every year we've had him, we've been a winning team. We've been a Super Bowl caliber, championship caliber team. And I feel like his personality was just the perfect embodiment of that Philly grit, that Philly sort of style, that Philly athlete style. Just a guy who resonated perfectly with the identity of the city itself. It just really didn't. It really doesn't make sense to me. I mean, that is the move that honestly hurt me the most. Josh Sweat, Milton Williams, we let them slide. That's cool. Darius Slay, we let him slide. That's cool. It hurts a little more, but that's cool. Kenneth Gainwell, we let him slide on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, that's even cool. But I mean, CJ Gardner-Johnson, one of our best defensive players, one of our best overall defensive players, one of the best DBs in the NFL, could easily makes the Texans much more of a playoff team for sure. That's exactly the type of guy that's exactly the type of guy that they need. But just giving a guy like that up makes no sense to me. It makes no sense to me, especially when you have a predominantly younger team, at least on the defensive side of the ball. It helps to have the veteran presence that comes with CJ Gardner-Johnson, that confidence that comes with CJ Gardner-Johnson, that grit that comes with CJ Gardner-Johnson, that toughness, that leadership. I mean, that was the one thing that I thought Howie Roseman made a huge mistake with. Like all the other moves that we have made so far this offseason, you can see the sort of positive in them. You can see the positive in not paying Josh Sweat and Milton Williams, because now that allows Nolan Smith and Jalix Hunt to develop more, to step up more, and to have more important roles on the defense. You can see the positive in not re-signing Darius Slay, because now that lets Ringo step up into more of a key role in the defense. Allows Quinn Mitchell to kind of grow into more of a leader, I guess. You can see the positive in not re-signing Kenneth Gainwell on the offensive side of the ball, bringing in, using that money to instead get an A.J. Dillon, you can see the positive in the other moves that Howie Roseman made. I can't see the positive in sending CJ Gardner-Johnson away. I can't see the positive in that. I mean, like I said, we do have Reed. Coop will get to step up, but Coop was already a key role on the defense with CJ Gardner-Johnson on the team. Reed Blankenship was a key piece on the defense with CJ Gardner-Johnson on the team. I honestly feel like playing with CJ Gardner-Johnson made those guys better. Definitely made those guys better. Those three were on the field at the same time because of the type of defense that Vic Fangio runs, that umbrella type of coverage, where you have three guys up top, three extra DBs up top behind the corners, behind the linebackers. I think that honestly, that kind of messes with Vic Fangio's scheme a little bit from this past year, because now we don't have that same type of presence over top that we did last year or this past season with CJ Gardner-Johnson. We won't have that same factor back there. So, I mean, that's definitely something that I am not in favor of. Now, one thing that I am in favor of, going to end it on a positive note, I am in favor of the decision with the moves with Kenny Gainwell, like I said. not re-signing Kenny Gainwell, even though he was a young guy. A lot of upside, after playing with Saquon Barkley. Seems like Saquon was kind of mentoring him a little bit, giving him a little more confidence in his ball carrying ability. I think it was a good move to let him go, to bring in a vet like AJ Dillon, who we know is going to be able to give us 700 to 800 yards off the bench in supplement to Saquon Barkley. A different type of, a true hard-nosed north to south type of runner behind the all-purpose versatile back that is Saquon Barkley. I feel like that's a perfect combination. I mean, AJ Dillon was a big reason why the Packers had one of the best run games in the NFL a couple years ago with him and Aaron Jones. I mean, AJ Dillon is good, was a great pickup in my opinion. And you don't bring an AJ Dillon in if you re-sign Kenny Gainwell for another 2 to 3 years. So I think that was a great move. I think that AJ Dillon will be the perfect sort of 2 to Saquon Barkley's 1 in a 1-2 punch combo. I think that's perfect because he's already used to being in that role. Like AJ Dillon is a guy who you could have as your starting running back, but you're in an even better position offensively when he's your number 2. When you have a guy like Saquon Barkley who you can lean on predominantly, but then rotate, shift to AJ Dillon, which will give not only your number 1 in Saquon Barkley, giving him a breather, but will also allow you to have a bit more force in that short yardage game. Like Saquon Barkley got tackled or stopped at the 1 yard line, I believe 15 to 16 times this year. I mean, it was a lot. I mean, he had quite a few times where he was stopped at the 1 yard line, definitely more than 10 times. So, and it was off of pretty big runs too. So you're telling me if you have a guy like that if we have AJ Dillon last year as opposed to Kenny Gainwell, you have a guy like that who is getting stopped when you have that many times where you are on the 1 yard line. The Eagles are on the 1 yard line more than any other offense in the NFL. And obviously we don't have an issue converting in those instances because of how effective the brotherly shove is. But this means now bringing AJ Dillon in, it means that the Eagles are even more potent in the red zone and on those goal line situations, because now the Eagles don't even have to run the brotherly shove. They don't have to. AJ Dillon could easily convert a 1 yard run into 6. I mean, that'll really be AJ Dillon's bread and butter. Saquon Barkley getting the big yards, breaking the big runs, getting us in the red zone. And then if we need to, let him rest, save his legs, and then also save Jalen Hurts' legs, having to run the brotherly shove. You let AJ Dillon cook the defense for a minute. Honestly, I think AJ Dillon was a great move because it not only will preserve Saquon Barkley in those goal line situations, where you're running him straight up the A gap, but it also preserves Jalen Hurts' legs in those situations too, because even though the brotherly shove is effective and safe for the most part, because there's not many instances where the brotherly shove has caused the player to be injured, if at all, really. It's still, if you can prevent your quarterback from being in excessive pileups, why not do that? And I think that is exactly what this AJ Dillon move does. It prevents Jalen Hurts from possibly getting rolled up on in a dog pile sort of situation like that the brotherly shove creates. It prevents your center and Cam Jurgens from having bad luck and being at the bottom of that dog pile, having your Pro Bowl center be at the bottom of that dog pile. You know, it prevents your right guard in Mekhi Becton, who has an injury, who has a history with injuries, prevents him from being, you know, sort of in that sort of pile, you know, possibly getting rolled up on. Like bringing AJ Dillon to Philly, it does a lot of things for this offense. It makes us more potent in the red zone. It makes us more versatile just as an overall offense. You know, having a dual threat running back like Saquon, the generational talent that he is, but also just having a pure, hard-nosed, head down, shoulders down, north to south runner that can pick us up either a 5-yard first down or a 10-yard first down. You know, just a guy that we need in those key moments where we just need to go straight up the gut. I mean, that, like, bringing AJ Dillon into Philly does a lot of different things for this offense. It makes the offense more dangerous, but then it also protects certain guys from possibly being hurt in the future. You know, because yes, we can still run the brotherly shove whenever we want and convert to a first down in situational football. But if you have a running back like AJ Dillon, you don't have to do that as much because he can get you them yards himself. He can either get you those yards himself, or he can make the brotherly shove even more dangerous because of how strong AJ Dillon is. I mean, AJ Dillon's legs are about the same size as Saquon Barkley's. About the same size. So if you have AJ Dillon and Saquon Barkley in the backfield behind Jalen Hurts, and you have Dallas Goedert back there with Jalen Hurts, who squats 600 pounds, like, you have 3 guys in the backfield who can squat over 500 pounds with Dallas Goedert. I mean, that even makes the brotherly shove more dangerous than it already is success-wise. So, I mean, I'm a huge fan of the AJ Dillon pickup. I think overall, I'm in a positive mood in terms of the way our offseason is going so far. Just aside from the CJ Gardner-Johnson move. That's the only thing I'm upset with. But overall, I'm very pleased with how this offseason is shaping so far for the Eagles, and the fact that it's not even done yet. It's not even done yet. You know, we still have another few weeks to make some moves, you know, and then of course with the draft coming up. So, I mean, I'm very pleased. But I mean, we're definitely, I mean, we're going to be talking about these free agency moves for, you know, really all week, because that's just the Eagles. There's so much more to talk about league wide, with the Devontae Adams going to the Rams, DeMarcus Lawrence going to the Seahawks, D-Hop going to Baltimore. Like, there's so much more to talk about. But and I'm gonna touch on that later this week. But that's all for today's edition of No Shame with Shane. If you haven't already, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to all of our social media platforms. And I will be back later on with more shameless takes.